continuar com o nosso programa. Antes, deixa eu me apresentar. Eu sou o Emílio e vou começar com a minha audiodescrição. Eu sou um homem branco, tenho cabelos e olhos castanhos, eu tenho barba e hoje eu estou usando uma camisa azul com detalhes vermelhos. No fundo, eu coloquei um fundo virtual da comemoração dos 90 anos do British Council. E como falei no início, vamos dar as boas-vindas a Araceli Salas e Grazzia Mendoza na palestra delas, que é intitulada Desbloqueando o Empoderamento Global das Mulheres, um exemplo de REA para o ensino da língua inglesa. Araceli Salas é uma educadora da primeira infância e terapeuta psicomotora terapêutica. Trabalhou durante anos em diferentes escolas e, em 2002, fundou a primeira associação de dislexia de língua espanhola, a DISFAM. Há 19 anos, ela combina seu trabalho como professora com a luta pelos direitos das pessoas com dislexia e outras dificuldades de aprendizagem. Atualmente, ela é porta-voz da Federação Espanhola de Dislexia e ela ministra vários cursos e várias conferências sobre o assunto em diferentes países da América Latina, especialmente para professores e para famílias com alunos com dislexia. Agora, Grazzia Mendoza, como pesquisadora da UIDA espanhol, ela facilita os processos de pesquisa e criação de recursos para a formação de professores, por meio da inovação, contextualização e na implementação de promoção de pesquisas conscientes, complexas e de qualidade. Então, vamos com a apresentação das professoras, por gentileza.
As well as how this resulted in an open access material to support teacher educators, student teachers, and women in the field. My name is Grazzia Mendoza. I'm a 30-year educator, passionate about the field and always advocating for quality of education and women empowerment and leadership. My colleague today with me is Araceli, and she is going to tell you a little bit about herself. Araceli?
Hello, thank you for being here. And we are very happy to be participating in the ELT 24. And my name is Araceli Salas, and I am here in Mexico. And we are very happy to be here. Yes.
So our agenda for today, in the second slide that you will see in a minute, will take us through what open access education resources are and how this connect to UNESCO SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, and what this looks like in ELT, how these open education action resources actually have an impact in ELT. Our project, we're going to tell you a little bit about it and how it was developed and why we decided this should be an open education resource book. We will also share about future projects and how you can engage. It's a project that has a whole series, and you will learn about it a little bit more as we move along. In the next slide, Araceli will share a little bit about open education resources.
Yes, thank you. Okay, first we have to define what open educational resources are. These are free and open available materials for use in teaching, learning, and for research. Every time that you see this symbol is because the authors have granted the access to these materials. They have been generous enough to let us use, access, adapt, and share the materials. So they are there for our use, for everybody's use. So these are OER, Open Educational Resources. What is the most interesting is that even UNESCO is in favor of this kind of materials. Since 2019, the UNESCO defined these materials as learning, teaching, and research materials in any format, media in the public domain, or are under copyright that have been released under an open license. So everybody can access and use, as I said, these materials at free cost. You can use them, you can adapt them, you can give the purpose that you want, but always we have to respect the authors' originality, and they keep the rights to use the materials because it's there, but they are giving us this license to use them. Thank you, Grazzia.
As you are aware, different governments, the United Nations, and civil society established in 2015 the Sustainable Development Goals with the intent of supporting the development of countries in terms of education and in all areas of life. Our focus with our work has been three of these Sustainable Development Goals, which include quality of education, gender equality, and reduced inequalities. The reason we see our work reflected and linked to these SDGs, it is because we are creating and editing materials that become accessible to teachers in ELT worldwide. We bring the voices of women to the forefront. We allow them to share their stories, their work, showcase their leadership, and all the initiatives that they are doing, and recognize their contributions to education in general. We're also making this work accessible and inclusive to reduce the inequalities in terms of access to materials, in terms of access to representation, in terms of access to voices being heard in all the platforms. We are also ensuring that we're making a connection, like Araceli mentioned, to open educational resources. So we are contributing to accessibility and reducing the gaps in terms of opportunities. And we're going to leave a link in the chat for you so that you can learn more about the SDGs and also the OERs and how these are connected.
So some of the advantages of open educational resources, as we have mentioned, is that they are free materials. You can find them everywhere online, and they are free to use. Because they come from everywhere, there are so many interesting topics, not only limited to what the book says, but you can find everything online. They provide authentic input because they come from different sources, from different people, from different contexts. Of course, they provide updated information. There are always new resources. The sources are always updating, and you can find all these materials always available. And because they come from everywhere in the world, they also raise intercultural awareness among students and teachers. These are just some of the advantages of open educational resources that we can mention. Okay. Well, this was about open educational resources, but now let us tell you a little bit about this project in specific. Grazzia and I have been working together in the empowerment, in making what women do more visible. We have been organizing forums, giving these female teachers, peers, leaders, a voice, a forum to showcase their projects, what they do at the academic, at the leadership, at the research context. And we have organized some of these events. For example, we have participated with Eve, Mentoring Women. We have given the voices to leaders in our region, and we have also shared what women around the world have done. So we saw the need to listen to women. Every time we get together, we can see how women are willing and ready to share their stories. Probably because they also want to inspire other women, probably because they have the need to tell their stories. Yes, so we started thinking about doing something that was not just giving them voice, but keep the voices in a resource. So we had a great idea. And then we came up with the book, the concept of a book, having all these stories in one resource that could be read by everybody in the world. And we decided that we wanted to collect, not only here, but only collect write, give them a voice, not only that to listen, but also to read, to reread, to reflect, even to analyze. And that is how the idea of this project came out.
So this series of Empowered Women in ELT, as we called it, was, of course, edited by Araceli and myself, and it brings together a collection narratives from women all over the world. Women who are empowered, women who are leaders in their own communities and in their own context, women who are inspired and who are an inspiration to other women, and that they are able to share their achievements and to share all those challenges that they had to face and how they overcame their challenges. What we especially like about this series is the fact that we see that women, of course, have positive achievements, but they also face challenges, but that doesn't prevent them from going the extra mile or to continue in their paths. That only motivates them to find solutions and continue in their path to becoming leaders, to becoming empowered, to becoming an inspiration. So, and we will leave the link over there in the chat also for you to review a little bit more of what we have been talking. So a little about the process. We sent out a call for chapters. We received a lot of submissions. It was very interesting because I thought it would be a slow process, but we started receiving a lot of interest, and we received close to over 50 ideas, and we wanted to include everything, but in the end, the book ended with a bit over 30 stories that made it to the book. And it was interesting to see that diversity, but at the same time, how these stories were cohesive. We went into the review process. We both reviewed all the stories, read all the stories. We laughed. We were excited with all the stories. We also cried. We became angry at times. So it was an array of emotions there. We went into the editing process together, and we also had other people support us in this process, like Antonio from Araceli's University, who was there to support us in the formatting and making those final revisions and making those packages in nice, beautiful chapters. And finally, we had a soft launch in November last year of the online presentation of the book, and we are now preparing for our in-person presentation, meet and greet the authors in Tampa, in Florida, in March. And we are very excited because we hopefully will have many authors there who are going to share their stories in person. So if you are in the Tampa area in March for TESOL, be sure to visit our presentation and meet the authors in person so they can tell you about their stories and that you can be inspired by these amazing women who are part of this collection of narratives.
Well, after all this process that Gracia mentioned, then we had, when we saw the book, the editing, we were amazed. The outcome was a great book with over 30 women's narratives from all over the world, from Latin America, our context, from America, from Canada, from Africa, everywhere, Asia. So all geographical areas were represented, and that became an authentic pedagogical resource for ELT, for English learning and teaching. And it was so interesting to see that these stories represented the true view of leadership and voices of women everywhere in the world. And we hope that this book becomes a valuable methodological asset for quality of education in alignment with the UNESCO's sustainable goals. From the very beginning, we organized the chapters in 3 sections. We asked the authors, the women, to give us a background, where they started, where the story began. Then they told us this process of empowerment and leadership, how they became, and they didn't have to be leaders. They could be also inspiration for other women. They explain how their teaching impacted on other women. And we also asked them to tell us what their perspectives into the future were. But at the same time, and we decided this as a resource with the purpose to be a resource for teachers, we included a section of critical thinking leading bullets at the end of the chapters, and this can be used for establishing goals, for giving readers a perspective of how these women became who they are and where they are. So, so these bullets can help teachers uh, develop skills, goals, as I said, in their students. And finally, we ask the authors to develop, to include some discussion questions that teachers could use in order to discuss the situations of each context. That probably if they found the stories similar to their own students. So there are these discussion questions that teachers can use in their own classrooms. That's why we recommend this book to be used as an authentic and OER in the ELT classroom.
And this is just an example of what the call looks like. And we wanted to make sure that we were showing this to you because we're going to talk a little bit about the future projects and we want you to identify what the calls look like. So it's a description of what we are expecting, how to submit the proposal. And then on the side, you can see the countries that Araceli was mentioning. And those are the countries that were represented in this first volume of the series. In the next slide, you're going to see the women that participated. And you can see the diversity in terms of representation, in terms of voice, in terms of origin, in terms of where they're coming from. And here, what I want to highlight and give a shout out to our prologue and epilogue writers, Argentina and based in Spain, and Dario Vanegas, who is from Argentina and based in the UK, who wrote the prologue and the epilogue for our volume number 1, and who really represented the essence of what all these narratives were explaining and were talking about. So we want to give a shout out to them for all the support, and also a shout out to our Relo, David Fay, based in Mexico, who is also working with us in ways of disseminating this book and making sure that it's accessible for everybody, for every teacher and every student teacher all over the world. Now, the next slide to mention that because everyone received our work so positively in terms of the people who submitted a proposal and the people who were accepted, it's going to be a good idea to keep the series going, but this time make it into other fields of the into other areas of the discipline and the field. And we decided that this year we were going to launch the next 2 volumes of the series, which is Women in Research and Women in Technology. So the focus of this next 2 volumes is also bringing the voices of women and representing the women and their leadership and empowerment, but we want them to share their ideas in 2 areas. Research, it can be the work that they're already doing, it can be ideas that they have for research, it can be things that have encouraged them to become part of research. And we have that volume that the call is out already. We're going to leave the link in the chat also. And then there's women in technology. How are they using technology for the classroom? How are they incorporating it into their curriculums? How is technology supporting that work that they are doing in the field? So these are 2 important topics where we are also seeing the contributions of women, and we want to highlight and raise their voices in terms of what they are doing in research and technology. Then the final volume, that's going to be for next year, 2025, and its focus is going to be on our steps and paths, and it's going to be talking about where your shoes have taken you. So as you can see, we have different things in the pipeline and different projects that are interesting, where women can showcase all of their work and their voices can be heard, and that we can see the variety of ways in which women are inspirational to their communities and to their contexts.
What are some reflections? Well, Well, now that Gracia was mentioning about the authors, I also was reflecting on the community, the beautiful community we have built together. They are always talking to us, they are always writing, they are disseminating also the work. But by reading all the stories, we could see the importance of role modeling. Yes, we never know when role modeling begins, when role modeling starts, or even when you can be a role model for all those around you. The need and the existence of strong networks. These strong networks are going to help empower and mentoring women. We have worked for these projects of mentoring women. And as linguists and as language teachers, we know the power of language and the discourse that all these women uh, present and the way they talk, they make us feel identified. Then we could find all these similarities and patterns in their trajectories, in the way they speak, in the way they present to the world. Of course, there are some cultural differences that you can see if you read the stories in the book, but they were the similarities and the networks and the connections that we found were really, really amazing. And on the other side, we could also identify some challenges that are common to women around the world. For example, we saw the gender roles still prevail in many cultures around the world. But anyway, and in spite of all these challenges mentioned by women, we saw that all of them are creating opportunities for themselves, for their family, for their students, for their peers, for all the women around them. So really reading these stories made us see the role that women play in society.
And we just want to conclude by saying that any initiative from real life can result in an open educational resource. So if you have an idea, get together with someone and work on this. English language teaching can be more meaningful when materials give this inspiration and provide authentic messages that go beyond the classroom. And this series of women's stories and the work that we are doing in the field can facilitate debates in the classroom, but they can also inspire others, inspire learners, inspire women to pursue their dreams and to achieve their goals by exposing them to real life stories and telling them that things can happen. People can do things, like it's possible. And this way, we're contributing to empowering and promoting leadership to women around the world. The intention is that this book, our efforts, our authors' efforts, and the upcoming volumes really inspire you, and that these efforts become an inspiration for you to turn this inspiration into action.
And
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Here are our email addresses. Please get in touch with us. We will be very, very happy to listen, to read your messages. Thank you so much. See you next year. Be built, be built.
And we are ready for your questions.
For your time and your attention. Actually, Professors Araceli and Grazzia are here with us today to answer to some of the questions that we had on our chat. I'm going to read the first one for you guys. Amanda DePirino, she's asking, throughout my career, I've had a very hard time trying to inspire girls to get into STEM. How can we, as English teachers, mentor and inspire more girls to pursue careers in the STEM fields? Very interesting questions. Professor Araceli or Gracio?
I can start. And well, yes, STEM is still developing for girls because these majors, these professions are not the classical occupation of women. But when they see that other women are doing this kind of profession, this kind of jobs, they are going to be inspired. That's why it is so important to share the successful stories of other women. For example, presenting them with Nobel Prizes, starting with Marie Curie and all those women who have earned those Nobel Prizes. I think that the teacher who asked this question, this can be a beginning. You can start inspiring those girls, presenting them with successful stories. And my recommendation could be probably the Nobel Prize winners. Yes, gracias.
Yeah, I would also add that it is important to have those role models that are global, but also those local role models as well. And I know that the U.S. State Department and I know the British Council as well are doing efforts along these lines of bringing role models of women in different spaces, and especially in STEM. I think also what we have done with the inspiring stories and what we are doing now as we are editing volumes 2 and 3 for research and for technology that connects with STEM is really another effort. If you bring these stories to young women and they can see themselves reflected here by the diversity and not only focusing on certain people achieving certain things, because it can also happen that some women role models can be foreign for some of our young women. But if we bring into the classroom global role models where we see a representation of all different voices, then young women can see themselves reflected in that, and that can resonate with them. And I would say also that for me as a woman, it has been women that have been role models, but there have also been men that have been role models in my life. So that support that we can get from men, from parents that would like their young girls to get involved in STEM, it's vital. So how do we bring the family and the community also to support the interest of these young women? I have seen examples in different schools on how the community comes together and supports involving more girls in STEM. So there are different projects out there. There are different ways in which different communities are doing it, and exploring those and bringing them into the classroom as examples would be a good strategy to get young women more interested and more involved.
Amazing. Perfect. So a lot of role models.
Yeah.
Professors, this connects to what the next question is asking. Maria Aranches, says, have you ever seen some issues or have you had any issues of parents not wanting to have their daughters mentored? Have you experienced any of these issues, any problems?
Fortunately, no. Just the opposite. We have seen parents supporting daughters and motivating them. And well, probably it's cultural, but here in our countries, we have seen that parents want their daughters, well, their children, but their daughters to be successful and to grow. Yes. No, we haven't. At least I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, perhaps things that we see sometimes is that parents are going to be cautious, right? They're just not going to let their children go with just anybody. They have to create a sense of trust with the people who are going to be mentoring them and who are going to be supporting them. So, parents, we are cautious, right? Our children are our most precious thing. We're just not going to let them go with anybody. But if we want to create these projects and we integrate the parents and we create that communication, that transparency, and that level of trust, I think no parent will be opposed to their children being mentored and growing and exploring things that otherwise they would not be exploring.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much once again. Thank you because we are in very different time zones, so we appreciate Professor Gracia
Early.
a little bit and Professor Araceli's time and flexibility to be here with us and live in Brazil. So once again, thank you so much for being here, and we will come back at 11:30 for the next session at the ELT Week in Brazil. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye bye.